You probably read the title of this video and thought, we're almost 2 months into 2024, why is she making this video now? And to be honest, I don't really have a good answer for you. Better late than never, is what I say, so be thankful you're getting this video now. Last year I read 65 books, which is just over one per week. And when I finish reading a book, I actually post it on my Instagram story, and I kind of sum up what it's about in about a sentence, so people who, if they want to read it, kind of know what it's about. And then I realised, why don't I make this into a video? So therefore, you can see all 65 books I read last year, and also a sentence to see if it interests you if you want to read it as well. Just a warning, some of my opinions about the books may seep through in the descriptions. But without further ado, let's get cracking. I'm Kat, by the way, welcome to the channel. Okay, let's get into it. The prequel to the Hunger Games trilogy exploring young President Snow's life, showcasing the root causes for his villainous career. This one's for the corporate girlies. It's about challenges that women face within the workplace, and how to overcome both work and home obstacles to further your career. This is a very moving fable that explores the meaning of life and life after death, where in heaven the protagonist meets 5 people from his life that unknowingly impacted his life. This is a disturbing yet beautiful South Korean novel about a woman's choice to go veggie being an allegory for women's mental illness in society, along with their constraints for how they are treated. This is literally published Star Wars fan fiction, but in an academic setting. It is not good. And that's coming from someone who loves Star Wars. This is a 1930s murder mystery where a detective unravels which of the 12 other passengers on the train killed the victim during a snowstorm. This is a very thought-provoking novel that explores Muslim identity and national security in Britain. It follows 3 siblings attempting to maintain their British loyalty whilst at the same time defending their political and social backgrounds. An English butler takes a motoring trip and reflects on his life and time serving lords who carry problematic political stances, along with working with the staff at these grand establishments. This is a coming-of-age story that follows 2 best friends experiencing girlhood and adolescence in 1950s Italy. It explores the intimate psychology between female friendships as well as issues of class and gender. This is a philosophical novel about an Indian boy stranded on a lifeboat with a tiger for 227 days. It has themes of spiritualism, symbolism, and how the nature of reality is perceived. I can honestly say this is way better than the film. An informative guide on menstruation and how different hormones in the body make you feel at different points within your cycle. And it also has accompanying lifestyle advice on how you should act during these times in your cycle. This is something so important and rarely talked about. This is a novel of a young Irish expat who's teaching English in Hong Kong, and it's about her bisexual relationships with a banker and a lawyer. Unfortunately, the times were not exciting in this book. This is an interesting novel into the mind of a teenage boy with high-functioning autism who investigates who murdered his neighbour's dog. Narrated as a band documentary transcript, the novel follows a fictional 1970s band's rise and fall along with drama between the members and addiction issues. Apparently it's based on Fleetwood Mac. The author documents her thought processes while staring at her face in the mirror for 3 hours. It explores her experience of being mixed race, identity, Buddhism, her family, and aging. This is a strange German novel where the protagonist is transformed into a giant insect and in turn it tears his family apart. It's actually an allegory for how capitalism destroys workers and society. This is a Spanish horror novel where a mysterious virus in animals is fatal to humans that eat its meat, so society turns towards domesticated cannibalism. This is a concise, comprehensive, and accessible retelling of the rise and fall of Troy during the Trojan War. It includes all the backstories of all the major players, and it's a great alternative or introduction to Homer's Iliad. This is an insightful non-fiction piece on how weight gain is actually driven by hormonal imbalances in the body and not just calories, specifically the effect of insulin on the body. This is a gorgeous but emotional French novel of a woman being a cemetery keeper living alone for the past 20 years. It's the most perfect story of life, death, marriage, motherhood, loss, grief, and it includes several plot twists with a perfect ending. This was actually one of my favourite books I read last year. This book is set in a dual time period of 1970s Cyprus and 2010s London. This novel explores the Turkish-Greek conflict, otherwise known as the Cyprus problem, that led to widespread loss, grief, and identity issues. This is a novel of 2 strangers meeting in New York and quickly getting married. There's no actual plot here, but the story shows the messiness and complexity of not so likable and flawed characters, especially when they deal with past trauma in relationships within the modern world. This is a parody of The Boy, the Mole, the Fox and the Horse that pokes fun at the flowery optimism within self-help books. This is an overly complicated, sci-fi, poetic, literary fiction novel that had way too many metaphors, made no sense, and was overall just very pretentious. I still have no idea what happens in this book. This is a touching Japanese novel where a group of teenagers are able to pass through their mirrors in the bedrooms to a magical castle, and they are tasked with a quest. It explores adolescent struggles, teen mental health, and friendship. This is a chilling story of an English backpacker's search and residence on an idyllic island in Thailand, untouched by tourism. But things turn dark when the island isn't the paradise as expected. I can also confidently say that this book is way better than the film. Sorry, DiCaprio. This is a feminist piece on how lovelessness can create a polarized society with disruptive relationships. I really wanted to like this book, but unfortunately it was just a bit wish-washy and boring for me. This is a young adult fantasy series, following a human girl attempting to win her place in the magical high court of fairy in Elfhome. I also wanted to like this, but I found it a bit boring and one-dimensional. This novel is essentially about a bisexual Jewish woman with an eating disorder and mummy issues. All I'll say is that the intimate scenes in this book literally felt like they were written by a man with a lesbian fever dream. This is a gothic thriller based on a haunted house where a young couple dealing with their son's death seek occultist help to find supernatural answers. Unfortunately, it wasn't that spooky. This is a dark academia novel following 6 students studying Shakespeare theatre. They later deal with the murder and the consequences that follow in its aftermath. This felt like a knockoff Secret History. Wow, I think I've slated the past 5 books. This was not a good part in the year for me. Surely you know what this book is about. If you don't, seek help. This story follows the lives of 2 young Black Londoners as they fall in love. The novel explores the nature of masculinity, the trauma of racism, and identity exhaustion, where you live in a country where Blackness is rarely celebrated and often rejected. This is a fictional story that follows a Mexican mother and her son as they flee to the United States to flee a murdering drug cartel. This is a novel of grief, fear, and survival, and showcases the traumatic journey that some migrants actually do face. This is a story where a young couple move into a new flat, but they have to get a lodger to help finance their wish to have a baby. But this lodger's already a bit too familiar with the boyfriend. I'm keeping it vague because I don't want to have any spoilers, but unfortunately this book's plot twist wasn't really that great. This is the famous classic novel following a very powerful mafia family living in New York City, struggling to keep power and protect their interests against violence and betrayal. This is a novella of a man's slow yet painful descent to death as he reflects on his life, whilst even though it was conventionally successful, he questions whether he truly lived. It contemplates heavy notions of life and death in tandem. This is a Colombian novel of mostly unrequited love, following a couple who were once infatuated with each other in their youth, leads to them pining for each other in old age when they're separated. It explores marriage, obsession, aging, sex, and death. This is a 1930s dystopian novel where marriage, family, and procreation has been eradicated from society. And the story follows several characters showing how widespread biological manipulation and social conditioning prevents genuine happiness and free will. This is a second chance romance novel where 2 adults meet again after 15 years, where they once spent a week together madly in love. It explores topics of masculinity, race, addiction, and motherhood. This is an autobiographical memoir of the author's panic years, which are a woman's years starting from her early 20s to her late 30s, where her decision to have children impacts everything in her life, including jobs, partners, travelling, etc. This is a coming-of-age novel that follows 2 best friends whose lives intertwine up, down, and around their love of video games. It's a complex and original story with well-developed multi-dimensional characters. This is a contemporary novel intimately following 3 Japanese women's frustrations and complexities with womanhood, from female rage in puberty and insecurity in body image, all the way to fear of loneliness from childlessness and a fear in growing old. This is a sapphic literary horror where a wife returns home from being stuck in a submarine under the sea for months on end. It's a slow burn and haunting story how love and grief can impact, change, and shape us. This is a collection of short stories that's set in Argentina, and they're mostly revolved around freaky teenage girls, demon children, and haunted houses. This novella is set in a small Irish town hit hard by winter and economic depression. The novella follows a coal merchant wrestling with his consciousness to act morally, even though it goes against the beloved Catholic Church. This is a really great read in shedding light on the abusive aspects of religious institutions. This is a 1960s classic novel following patients at a psychiatric hospital, where they are dealing with mind-numbing treatment and the threat of shock electrotherapy. It portrays how society's pressure to conform to its boundaries destroys individualism. This is a wholesome fantasy novel following a government caseworker as he inspects magical children in a peculiar orphanage. It's a cute, easy read, full of whimsy, and it has a very lovely ending. This is a novel that alternates between past and present for 20 years as it follows the relationship between a girl and her elderly neighbour. It explores time, ageing, identity, art and love all within a post-Brexit climate. This is a very basic feminist piece that I think would have been beneficial in 2013, but for 2023 felt very obvious and simplistic. It felt surface level and contains a lot of fluff and meaningless buzzwords that, to be honest, felt more like performative feminism. This novel follows 6 classic students at a small but elite liberal arts college. The story is narrated by one of the students who tells the circumstances and everlasting effects of the murder of one of their friends. This is actually one of my favourite books ever, so this was actually a reread last year. This is a collection of 10 letters that Rilke sent to an up-and-coming poet over 100 years ago. The short 50-page book is full of nuanced life advice, including living as an artist, handling solitude, and processing grief. This is the coming-of-age classic novel that follows 4 sisters transitioning from girlhood to womanhood, united in their devotion to each other whilst also surviving the American Civil War. This is a psychological thriller following a young man conducting a series of scams to live a life of wealth, after he becomes obsessed with this really rich, amazing man. But this obsessiveness leads him down a darker moral path to maintain his life of luxury. This is a novel of 2 teenage cannibals as they embark on a US road trip. It's as weird as it sounds. But this book has an interesting concept of metabolism as a metaphor for intimacy. This is a novella of a modern telling of the Greek myth where the sculptor wills his statue to come to life and be his wife, yet he expects her to be pure, obedient and mute. This is a cautionary tale of when men yearn for female perfection. This is a murder mystery novel where 10 strangers are all brought together on a private island by an eccentric millionaire host. But all the guests have a dark secret which marks each one of them for death. This story is of a teenage boy who discovers his father is Poseidon, and he is tasked with a quest to retrieve Zeus's lightning bolt before all the gods go to war. This fantasy novel is set in 1830s England, where the economy is fueled by these magical silver bars that capture what is lost in translation between languages. The plot follows 4 young students learning this magic whilst at the same time maintaining Britain's imperialist supremacy and colonisation. This is a bizarre yet witty novel of a woman struggling with grief and depression, and she attempts to erase her identity for sleeping for 1 whole year. This book is a Christmas reunion of a very dysfunctional and odd family, where the book mostly revolves around their conversation of art, politics, and love. Priscilla Presley recounts her problematic relationship with Elvis from first meeting him. He was 24, she was 14, revealing details in his toxic behaviour, including manipulative traits, numerous affairs, and heavy drug use that eventually led to their divorce. This is a novel of a Canadian woman in her late 20s as she's going through a divorce. She basically just complains and whines about her life the whole way through. No wonder her husband left her. Just saying. And those are all the books I read in 2023. Did you read any of these books? If you did, let me know in the comments below. I'd like to see how many we got together. I'd also like to see if I can beat my number of 65 books this year. I'm hoping to maybe get 70. But at the end of the day, reading books I find is more about quality than quantity, so I'd rather read bigger, better books than many smaller ones. So we'll see. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like. It really helps me out. And if you're new here, please subscribe. I make videos every Tuesday and it'd be nice to see you there. Please feel free to also follow me on my Instagram. I post a lot more personal stuff on there, but I also post books as soon as I read them and give a rating and tell you what they're about. So you don't therefore have to wait until the end of the year for me to make a video like this. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed and I'll see you next time. Bye!